Well, scientists continue to explore our genetic makeup to find out whether we can predict the likelihood of many diseases. A company at the forefront of some of this technology is Genetic Technologies, which holds legal rights across 24 countries for the use of non-coded DNA for analysis. Chief Executive Paul MacLeman joins me from Melbourne to discuss all of what's in store for 2011. Thanks so much for joining us, Paul. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me, Nadine.
Just give us, a brief taste of what makes up the business of Genetic Technologies. I understand it's three streams. You've got the patents, you also have the R&D, as well as, the actual technology for genetic testing.
So the company's foundation was really in the area of what's called non-coding DNA, and a neat analogy for that is when you pick up a newspaper and if you imagine the genes or the words on the page, the non-coding part of the DNA, which makes up the vast majority of your genome, is really like the white space on a page. So it's largely ignored, and it was ignored for a long time until we made some fairly foundational discoveries in the late 80s, and the purpose of that non-coding DNA was quite unknown until fairly recently. But like words on a page, if there wasn't a white background behind the words, you wouldn't be able to read the content. And same with your own DNA. Without the contrast and the ability to read into the non-coding regions, you can't actually tell what the genes are and what they're doing. That business has been quite good to us over the years. We've now got over 50 licensees in, as you say, about 27 countries. A lot of them are in the US. We've always taken the policy of licensing those patents non-exclusively rather than exclusively. And so everything from people who are breeding better cows for you to eat naturally, to making better crops, all the way through to better pharmaceuticals. And Genetic Technologies has licensed the likes of Monsanto and Pfizer and many other multinational companies who've seen the worth of those patents.
Okay,
and they continue to be a strong value driver for us going forward. We have changed our patent licensing strategy in the last 12 months, and indeed writing approximately one new license a month at the moment. So it's a very big income stream for us.
All right, so Paul, just so that we're clear, you actually own the patents to that particular part of the DNA, and that's what you then license on.
Nobody can own DNA, as has been in the press recently. What we own is the ability and the knowledge and the way to use those non-coding regions to better analyse the genes that you have.
Okay.
So without the use of those non-coding regions, it's very hard to know what some genes do and whether they're being expressed or not.
Okay, so some of our viewers might be familiar with the name Genetic Technologies for a controversy that really came to the fore a couple of years ago after the company tried to shut down testing for a couple of cancers by public labs, basically for using DNA to which GTG held the intellectual property patents. Is that particular issue behind the company?
It's very much behind the company now. That issue didn't actually relate to our own patents. When we licensed a large company in the US called Myriad, who's also in the breast cancer space, they have annual sales in the breast cancer diagnostic area of about $300 million a year. And they do that around a set of patents around genes called BRCA1 and BRCA2. When we licensed Myriad, we received in return, in part, a license to offer the tests back here in Australia. And we were at that time, and still are, the only commercial lab offering the test here in Australia. Part of the obligations often when you write a license is the obligation to let the patent owner know what's happening in the local market. And I guess when we were aware that other institutes were using the technology, we informed Myriad, and that in part sparked the controversy. That in fact happened before my as CEO, and we've since moved on from that, and we are now either acquiring or developing our own new technologies, such as Brevigen, which we acquired last year from a company in the Bay Area during the GFC. And that's quite an interesting story, actually, in that not all companies were disadvantaged by the GFC, and indeed we were one of the ones that did very well out of it, in that we were already negotiating with that company to license their technologies to bring it down here in Australia. And as a result of the GST, that company had to sell all of their assets. And we basically paid less than $1.5 million for assets that they had invested in excess of $320 million for.
Okay, so the Brevigen assets bought on the cheap, what do you intend to do with them, and what difference will that make to your bottom line then in 2011?
Our bottom line's being helped very strongly at the moment by the high volume of licensing that we're writing at the moment, and indeed, if you watch our reports in the next couple of weeks, we'll be reporting an updated profit and a cash flow forecast which investors may find very interesting. On the Brevigen side of things, I guess unlike a lot of what you see on the front page of newspapers, where this, that, and the other researcher may be saying that they've made a new discovery and they'll be bringing that to market in 10 years' time, the Brevigen assets, when we acquired them, was actually a fully formed product. So we'll be launching that in the US within the next 2 months. And at the present time, we're actually building our sales and marketing sales force in the US. We've opened commercial offices in North Carolina, and we'll be expecting sales for that this financial year.
Well, how about trends, though, for 2011? Because we do have a patent debate, a gene patent debate ongoing here in Australia. There is a bill before Parliament right now that was brought in by New South Wales Liberal Senator Bill Heffernan, saying that you cannot actually patent and own intellectual property over any biological material. So is that sort of something that has the potential to affect the company in 2011 and going forward?
No, not at all, Nadine. Genetic technologies, for a start, has always abided by the current rules. So we've never stepped outside the existing patent laws in Australia as they stand. But as far as the issue itself goes, we would welcome the clarification of the issue. We too believe that the patenting of genes per se is probably not in the public interest. And the patents that we have access to through Myriad are actually method of use patents. And to explain that a little bit, it's not a patent over the gene itself that's interesting. It's the way that you use the information about aberrant genes to advise people on their risk of breast cancer that we're very interested in. And so with both the BRCA testing and the Brevigen testing, what we're aiming to do is to give physicians and women in Australia better understanding of their genuine risk of getting breast cancer. Breast cancer is one of those very interesting cancers. In fact, it's almost unique in that there is a preventive product for it. So if you can identify those women who are genuinely at risk, you can actually administer a drug that can actually halve their risk of getting breast cancer. So our goal here in Australia and around the world is to provide the best health information to patients and to women and their doctors so that they make informed decisions about preventing and treating cancer.
Okay, Genetic Technologies, ticker code GTG on the ASX. You're also NASDAQ listed. The share price has not done very well over the past year, even as the top biotech performers here in Australia way outperformed the broader market in 2010. So how do you see yourself turning around the share price? I mean, what's your cash position like? What are you expecting from 2011?
On the cash side, we're expecting, indeed we'll be reporting shortly our revised cash flows, which obviously we can't discuss in detail here tonight, but suffice it to say we've been very pleased with how our out-licensing program has performed in the last 6 months. We've been writing approximately 1 new licence a month, and they've been increasing in value, and we won't be needing to go back to the markets for money anytime in the near future, so we'll effectively be self-funding for the foreseeable future. In terms of what I see happening and why the share price hasn't moved, 2010 was very much a rebuilding year for the company. We changed the company. Genetic Technologies was historically a very broad and unfocused company, and we've really focused Genetic Technologies down on cancer management. And so it's been a period where we've been consolidating that strategy, acquiring new products, developing new products. And in 2011, I think that the investors will see us actually executing on those plans, launching products in the US, developing and bringing to market new products in other markets such as Europe. So it's been very much a bit like the duck on the pond this year. It might have looked serene on the surface, but there's been lots of furious paddling underneath as we put in place the building blocks to go forward. All
right. Well, by all accounts, you really did have your work cut out for you when you took the helm of the company a few years ago. So we wish you luck. Paul MacLeman from Genetic Technologies, thanks so much for joining us this evening from Melbourne.
Thanks so much, Nadine.